In the heart of feudal Japan, one man's genius on the battlefield would end a war, destroy the most powerful family in the nation, and forge an empire for his brother. He was a hero, a prodigy, a legend, and for his reward, he was hunted down, betrayed, and forced to take his own life. This is the tragic story of Minamoto no Yoshitsune, the brilliant shadow behind the first shogun. Our story begins in 1159, a time of violent change. Two great samurai clans, the Taira and the Minamoto, were locked in a bitter struggle for control of Japan. In the year Yoshitsune was born, his father, the leader of the Minamoto clan, was defeated and killed. The Taira clan seized absolute power. The Minamoto were crushed. As the ninth and youngest son, Yoshitsune was captured as an infant. He was spared death only because of his mother's desperate pleas. Instead of the executioner's block, he was sent to a monastery on Mount Kurama to live out his days as a monk, forgotten by the world. But you cannot bury a storm. As Yoshitsune grew, he learned of his true lineage, the last son of a fallen clan. He refused to let his family's legacy die in a secluded temple. He vowed to avenge his father and destroy the Taira. As a teenager, he escaped the monastery and made a perilous journey north to the remote province of Shi. There, under the protection of the powerful Lord Fujiwara no Hidehira, the young monk transformed. He trained relentlessly in the art of war. The boy died, and in his place, a warrior was born. For years, he waited. Then, in 1180, the call came. His long-exiled older brother, Yoritomo, had raised an army to overthrow the Taira. The Genpei War had begun. Yoshitsune raced to join his brother, a man he had never met. The reunion was dramatic. The last sons of the Minamoto, united against a common foe. Yoritomo was the politician, the cold, calculating strategist. Yoshitsune was the weapon, a military genius unlike any Japan had ever seen. Yoritomo, recognizing his brother's ferocious talent, unleashed him upon the Taira. But this brilliant, unpredictable weapon would prove to be a double-edged sword. His very genius, the thing that would win them the war, would also sow the seeds of his own destruction. Yoshitsune was the storm his brother Yoritomo unleashed. His first task was not against their main enemy, but against his own cousin. Yoshitsune crushed him, securing Yoritomo's position as the undisputed leader of the Minamoto clan. With the clan united, the real war began. Yoshitsune's campaign was a whirlwind of victories, each more daring than the last. He didn't just fight battles, he reinvented them. His first legendary moment came at the Battle of Ichi-no-Tani. The Taira were fortified in a narrow fortress, protected by the sea and an impassable cliff. A frontal assault was suicide. So Yoshitsune did the unthinkable. He led a small, elite cavalry force to the top of the cliff. His own men hesitated, believing the descent was impossible. To prove it could be done, Yoshitsune forced a horse down the cliff. When it survived, he gave the order. In a move that has become legend, the Hyodorigo no Saka Otoshi, he and his men charged on horseback straight down the cliff face, plunging directly into the rear of the unsuspecting Taira camp. The attack caused mass panic. The Taira fortress fell in a single day. Next, at the Battle of Yashima, he used deception, lighting hundreds of bonfires to trick the Taira fleet into believing a massive army had arrived, forcing them to flee. These victories were more than just strategic successes, they were psychological blows. The Taira, who had ruled Japan for a generation, were now terrified of the ghost they had failed to execute as a child. Yoshitsune was the hero of the hour, but back in Kamakura, his brother Yoritomo watched with growing unease. Yoritomo was building a new government controlled by him alone. He demanded absolute loyalty. Yoshitsune, however, was a free spirit, a warrior who cared for victory and honor, not rigid protocols. This fundamental difference between the brothers, the pragmatic politician and the charismatic warrior, was a fault line running deep beneath their alliance. The Taira were now broken, cornered for one last stand at sea. At the Straits of Dan-no-ura, Yoshitsune would achieve his ultimate victory, but on that same day, in the midst of his greatest triumph, he would make a fatal political mistake that would turn his own brother against him for good. The date was March 24, 1185, the Battle of Dan-no-ura. This was the final act of the Genpei War. The entire Taira clan, with the child Emperor Antoku and the sacred imperial regalia, were on their fleet. Initially, the battle favored the Taira, but Yoshitsune was a pragmatist. He gave a shocking order: ignore the samurai code and target the non-combatant rowers and helmsmen. This was a brutal but effective tactic. The Taira ships lost control. Then, the tide turned literally. The current reversed, pushing Yoshitsune's fleet forward for a final, devastating assault. As defeat became certain, a tragic scene unfolded. The Taira lords and ladies began to throw themselves into the sea. The grandmother of the child emperor took him in her arms and, telling him their new home was at the bottom of the ocean, leaped into the waves. The Taira clan was annihilated. The war was over. In the aftermath of his victory, Yoshitsune made a critical error. Eager for recognition, he accepted a court title from the retired emperor Go-Shirakawa without first seeking his brother's permission. To Yoshitsune, it was a deserved honor. To Yoritomo, it was an act of defiance. It confirmed his fears that his popular brother could not be controlled. Yoritomo's fury was absolute. He refused to allow his heroic brother entry into his capital of Kamakura. Yoshitsune was stopped at a nearby town, where he wrote a desperate, heartfelt letter pleading his loyalty to the Koshigo J. The letter was ignored. Yoritomo had made his decision. Yoshitsune was no longer a hero. He was a threat. Declared an outlaw, the man who had won the war was now a fugitive, hunted by the very regime he had helped to create. His only hope was to return to the one place that had always protected him, the northern domain of his old guardian, Fujiwara no Hidehira. But his luck was running out. Soon after Yoshitsune arrived, the wise and powerful Hidehira died of illness. Hidehira's son, Yasuhira, inherited leadership, but he lacked his father's courage. He soon received a chilling ultimatum from the Shogun Yoritomo: betray Yoshitsune, or face the full might of the Kamakura army and have your entire domain destroyed. Faced with Yoritomo's overwhelming pressure, Fujiwara no Yasuhira buckled. He chose to save his own lands by betraying the man his father had sworn to protect. In 1189, Yasuhira sent his army to surround Yoshitsune's residence at the Kuromo River. Yoshitsune and his handful of loyal retainers were trapped. One of his most famous followers, the giant warrior monk Musashib Benki, made a legendary last stand. He stood on the bridge before the residence, a one-man army, cutting down soldier after soldier to buy his master time. Riddled with arrows but refusing to fall, Benki died on his feet, a statue of pure loyalty. The enemy soldiers were too terrified to approach, believing he was still alive. This was the standing death of Benki, an image of devotion that has defined the samurai spirit for centuries. Inside, knowing the end had come, Yoshitsune was calm. He first took the lives of his own wife and children to spare them the horror of capture. Then, as his last loyal followers held back the enemy, he committed seppuku. Minamoto no Yoshitsune, the greatest military genius of his age, died at just 31 years old. His death had a profound and lasting impact on the Japanese psyche. He was seen as the ultimate tragic hero, brilliant, but destroyed by a cold, political world. This gave birth to a uniquely Japanese concept, H-ganbiki. H-ganbiki translates to sympathy for the underdog. It is the deep-seated cultural tendency to root for the tragic loser against the successful winner. His story became the stuff of legend. People refused to believe he was truly gone. This led to incredible survival myths. One legend claimed he escaped to Hokkaido, another, even more fantastic, claimed he crossed the sea to the mainland and became Genghis Khan. These theories have no historical basis, but they speak to a powerful truth. People wanted their hero to live. In the end, Yoritomo built his shogunate, a government that would rule Japan for over 150 years, but he did so by sacrificing his own brother. Yoshitsune's legacy is a paradox. He was the perfect warrior who couldn't survive the peace he created. His tragedy serves as a timeless warning that in the games of power, loyalty, and genius are often no match for jealousy and fear. He remains Japan's most beloved hero, not because he won, but because of how beautifully and how tragically he lost.